Good morning, everybody. So happy to see you. So happy to be here this morning. So let's start with our meditation. And we'll do the same Om meditation. And that'll be how we get started. Okay, so let me explain it just briefly. With the Om meditation, the sound Om is divided into 3 syllables. Ah at the base of the spine, oo in the heart center, and with a little vibration to it in the third eye. And so we sing it the first time with a rising pitch. We start low and go high, whatever works for your voice. We do that 9 times, and then we do a whisper 9 times. And then the third time, we say the syllables inside ourselves into the energy centers, and then we just watch the energy rise as we do that. And we can do that the 4th time too, or we can just watch the energy rise. But the entire time we're connected to the feeling of the Om sound as it rises in our central channel. So I'll demonstrate the sound once, and then please join with me. Oh. Gently open your eyes and allow yourself to come present to the outer world, but holding your attention still in the inside on the central channel. And allow yourself to be two places at once as you come into the room and hold your center. So we welcome your questions this morning. You know, last time we got into the politics of the external world, which is quite distressing to Rebecca. So we've been going around about it in the last week with her. And here's what we have to say. Humanity cannot heal anything that it can't see. And the way these issues of civil rights, they're all issues of civil rights and diversity, the way these issues present themselves over time is in a spiral. That's why it feels like we've already done this before. We thought we finished it, but it's not done, because there is this deep part of the inner soul of humanity that has yet to be healed of these issues. And until they're healed in a way that, as the human collective comes to grips with this idea that equality, fundamental equality for every human being, has a way that it can be respected and expressed without harm to the whole. And that supporting that is really what the human collective is about. But there are a significant number of human beings who don't believe that. And so until humanity as a collective rises up and heals that. And how does healing happen? Healing doesn't happen because we do some intervention. You know, regular allopathic medicine never talks about cure, because they know that what they do doesn't cure, it just alleviates symptoms. Cure is not something, and health is not something that's ever discussed in that arena, except in the form of disease management. So our culture has this idea that healing happens from some outside intervention. Change happens from, violence is what we're seeing. And until humanity as a collective understands that change happens from inside each human being, as we cultivate respect for ourselves and love for ourselves and love for the ones who love us, who we love, and we really work in our own lives to figure out what that means and how to do it. And that expands like the circles in the water when you drop a stone into a still pond. And that energetic frequency, as it expands from each human being who really deeply endeavors to study the source of our experience, the source of our beingness here, and feel into what it is to be in contact with that, which we'll say is not all sweetness and light, but the reason most people come to spirituality is because they feel so bad they don't know what else to do. And so there is the search for bliss that is a part of spirituality. But that's not the goal. The goal is connection to that which is reality. Connection to ultimate reality, which of course is beyond linear language, which seems like a cop-out as we're trying to have this discussion, because always we come to this place where language doesn't express it, but there is the understanding that the whole contains all the parts. And so it's not really about bliss, although having access to that experience is part of the journey, if we want to call it that. But it's not exactly the goal. The goal is alignment with our highest self. And so this is what we are searching for, cultivating. Well, not say searching for, because we're cultivating it, because it exists inside of us. So we're cultivating a connection, the connection with our highest self. And in that cultivation, as we begin to approach everything in our life, like, what would my highest self do? Which is very often a very different answer from what we want to do in the moment. So, and it's a little different from what would Jesus do, because that eliminates our responsibility for the answer. That makes us dependent on some other. And when we face the critical moments in our life, we can't go to some other for the answer. We can only go inside ourselves and say, what would my highest best do to serve me and the whole? We don't leave ourselves out of the equation, but we don't make ourselves the entire equation either, because it's our highest self that we want to be aligned with. So it is in coming to understand everything that happens in our life, everything that we witness, as helping us to align deeper. That's what we're doing here. So we hope that puts a little bit more perspective into the equation. Rebecca's a little bit having trouble channeling this morning in terms of the heaviness of the overall environment is a little bit difficult to channel through. So we may end up having a bit of a shorter program for that reason. That's how we'll say it. There's a density in the environment
Rebecca, can I ask a question?
Please.
I was just, you made me think, that, and it resonates with me that it's all about alignment with our highest self and how it's a spiral and we keep coming back. And that makes me wonder, do we ever finish? I feel like I'm okay with this if we don't. I mean, I kind of wonder if maybe it's just kind of like we tap out and we go to the other side and then we come back again and we do it again. I kind of wonder, do we
So
ever really?
You're asking if it's an exercise in futility?
Possibly. And I'm okay with it if it is, because I'm loving this experience. I love my life. I have a great life, and everything, the beautiful, the not so beautiful, the really good, the not so good. I love it all. So I'm okay with it. But it seems like I've been growing since I was born. And, it's just like every day it's something new. And I agree with you. Right now it's so dense and so thick. And, sometimes it's easier to think about there's the light at the end. It's like at the end, I'm going to get something out of all this. And I'm beginning to realize that what I'm getting out of all this is just the moment by moment by moment. The being able to participate is the gift.
You're exactly right, that being able to participate and appreciate the ability to participate, no matter how dense it is, without rejecting ourselves for that density.
Yeah.
And so we can sit in the density and say, oh, the communication is difficult today because it's dense. It's like a snowstorm. You don't punish yourself because it snows and you can't go outside.
Right.
But somehow we think that when we have a dense day, that means we're not doing our work. Actually showing up on a dense day is sometimes the best work we can do to demonstrate that density is not failure. All parts are welcome.
Yes.
And so, when a person is in a deep grief state, understanding that that's love turned inside out, it doesn't make the grief go away, because who would want the love to go away? Right. Grief and love are the same. They're just one's inside out and one feels fantastic and the other one feels the opposite. But to not love, to say I'll never love again because it's so painful when there's separation. No, we break open and become more love from allowing that intense experience to just pave a path to our center, to the all that is the source, that is so difficult to speak about, but lends itself to this appreciation of the whole. And equanimity is, it's the most difficult thing in the world. Because when it's required the most is when we're the least likely to be able to do it.
Absolutely.
And so you have to realize that Rebecca is speaking from her own density. So we're coming through that density. So just know that, because she herself is questioning her reliability as a channel for source in this moment, but at the same time feels that it's imperative to show up in all moments as a demonstration of that we don't let go just because it's hard.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for sharing. this is really a sharing. You know, I'm not a teacher, I'm a channel, and I'm doing the best I can. And mostly my job is to show up no matter what and just tell the truth, whatever it is in that moment. Because it is in telling the truth to ourselves, accepting what is inside ourselves, that we at least begin to have a trustworthy self. And in that context, as we cultivate appreciation for our beingness and what it is to truly love ourselves, because without loving ourselves, how can we love another? We don't know what it is. And we understand pretty quickly as we try to love another person that it's a lot of work, as it's a lot of work to love ourselves. And in that context of appreciation, it turns into compassion for ourselves and everyone else. But this can only arise out of the experience of allowing what is to be and not rejecting self with either a small s or a large s. Small s being our ego self and large s being the highest self. So we suddenly went blank. We'll see. How may we serve?
I have a question.
Yes, Wally, so happy to see you.
Thank you. It's lovely to see you too. I guess I have a couple of questions. When you talk about the density in the atmosphere, is there any point in asking why it's dense now, or is it just kind of like the weather?
Well, we could talk about the astrological weather. That's how we would view it in this moment. And each of us has our personal weather receptive device that is different from everybody else's. It's completely unique. And so how we interact at a given moment is going to be different from everybody else on the planet. And so having that understanding, we know that any generalization we make is only going to be true for a certain number of people. Now, there are what we call mass events. You know, for example, the war in Ukraine. Doesn't matter how good your chart is. You know, when that kind of stuff starts happening around you, you have little choice about, you have choices about how to act, but they're mostly based on external reality in the moment rather than what is possible in the astrological weather plane. Because we have lived in peace for so long, we have the really, compared to most of humanity, we have the luxury of actually experiencing our own internal weather primarily and experiencing the whole through that. So we have some chance of understanding what our internal weather is based on. We can understand our own blueprint is another way to say that.
My second question is about young and old souls, and you don't talk about this in my experience, but I'm wondering when we describe the the political situation, it seems to me that a lot of what the people, the behavior we're seeing in the people in power is young soul behavior, um, lack of empathy, lack of tolerance for diversity, um, and service to self. And if there are always X% of people operating from that level of consciousness, I wonder what's possible.
Well, the reason we don't talk about that is because anything is possible, because every human being has free will. And so to designate somebody a young soul who has no capacity for change is sort of the antithesis of what we feel is our purpose, because there is no person who is unreachable from the highest in the Inasa temple. And so we, people have had amazing conversion experiences historically. And so the designation of, it's like a kind of a wish for a kind of spiritual hierarchy, which, we all want to feel like we've accomplished something in our inner work. And so there is a tendency to wish for that. And we've all seen people who have reached great heights and, gone through reverse conversions too. So old soul, young soul, it's really, we each come in with a power distribution in our blueprint. And this is not to say that the astrological blueprint is the blueprint, because, my teacher said to me the other day, he said, astrology is 25% knowing the information, 25% intuition, and 50% the grace of God. This is somebody who's been doing it for over 30 years. And so it is both an art and a science. And there's, all kinds of spiritual stories about why it's not an exact science. But you can see just from a physical point of view. So is it when the baby comes out, when the cord is cut, when the baby takes the first breath? 10 minutes makes an enormous difference in an astrology chart. So that's one of the reasons it's not exact. So, it's humbling to try to understand a field like that. Because, essentially what he's saying is how integrated you are with your highest self has everything to do with what a life is, regardless of circumstance. So it comes down to, it's not what you're given, but how you deal with it. And compassion for self and others is definitely worth cultivating. And as we try to come into harmony with ourselves, that's how we understand how hard it is. That's where the compassion comes from, because we reach a point where we cannot progress without compassion for ourselves. And any attempt to leap over that actually does great self-harm. So to just sit in that awareness is the source of compassion for ourselves. Having understood that, then compassion for the other is easy. So, we'll just say it. What you usually see when you're with us through Rebecca is that she's smiling and the light's pouring out. Today, there's still a lot of light, but the smile is not quite there. And and there's no reason, we'll tell you, we'll let Rebecca tell you, okay, there's no reason for me to feel bad. Nothing bad has happened in my life. There is no crisis. There is no bad news. There is nothing wrong in the outer world. There's just a feeling of heaviness and can't quite channel the way I usually do. And yet they're still encouraging me to be here, because it's important to know that in those moments, you're still fine. There's no reason for self-rejection, just because it's harder than usual. So if that's the only message we give today, that's still worthwhile, because we all have difficult days. This is part of being human. And showing up is how we learn to accept it all and be with it all. And Doris, in a way, we avoided your question, because it's easy to turn that question into, is this a meritocracy? Is spirituality meritocracy? If you do enough good, then you're going to be rewarded in heaven. And it's not exactly like that. Nobody's worthy and nobody's not worthy. It's grace. It's grace that we can even have this conversation. that they're not bombs dropping on our doorstep. That we have the luxury of entertaining what's real. Mm.
Thank you for just showing up.
Oh, you're totally welcome. Yeah.
You know, because to be honest with you, I needed this today. I just needed to tune in and be present and have you show up and see your face and get to wave. And sometimes that's all it takes. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. And it, you know, it's so interesting to describe the experience. My heart is open.
Mhm.
There's just a certain density.
Yes, there is.
Like it's trying to project through cotton instead of air.
Yep. I get it. I
Yeah.
get it.
Thank you so much. Hmm. Wally, did we answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Somehow they sort of blended together into the same issue. How may we serve further? Brenda.
So a question that has come in, little different path. So this is regarding the Anasa temple.
Yes.
And the question is, can we take ideas to the temple? For example, challenging a collective reality, or is the temple specifically for resolutions with people in our lives?
Oh no, the temple is for everything. For example, it's a healing center. So whenever we have something wrong with our body or our mind, we can go to the Anasa temple, put ourselves on a treatment table, and ask for help. So to me, that, you know, addressing the collective, absolutely. But remember that whenever you speak anything that involves an other in the Anasa temple, you must speak from your highest self. So this means that we have to carefully examine our prejudices. Our matrix of belief is the word we prefer instead of the word prejudice. Because a matrix of belief is something that we're handed when we're very young, and we have nothing to say about what that matrix of belief is until we're an adult and we start to examine the things that were handed to us that are like the wallpaper in our psyche that we take for granted as being true. And these things are very deeply embedded in us, and it takes a fair amount of effort and, you know, real attention to leverage our attention to these deeper assumptions that we have been taught about the way we are and the way other people are. For example, most people, even a lot of people that I know have done enormous amounts of spiritual work, view the world, they expect that everybody experiences the world the same way they do. And it can be about very mundane things, and it can be about very large things. And so that people who experience the world in a different way from them feel wrong. And so there is this judgment that comes up about, and we all do this. We assume that because we experience something in a certain way, that everybody else has that same value system. And so a lot of what we learn as we engage our deeper selves and interact in the world is we learn that there's a reason that sages have said, if you want to do your child a great favor, as soon as they get to be a certain age, send them on a long journey so they're exposed to many different matrices of beliefs, many different cultures, and they learn that people are diverse, that cultures are diverse, and that what's love to you and me may not be love to somebody else. What's an assumption about behavior for us is not the same. And, you know, it can be your next door neighbor that has a complete diverse upbringing and assumption about everything in their life that's different from yours. And so, you know, that's a lot of how we learn about where our work is inside. So it's not that everything is just staring inside, but we use our minds too to evaluate our matrix of belief. Because whenever we're in discomfort, it shows that there's diversity in action. And so that's a time to look in and say, am I really, you know, the limitation in this situation, or am I uplifting it? And what would my highest self do? Or say?
The,
You know,
the response is, that helps, thank you.
Oh, good, good. A number of years ago, I was in a suicidal state. It doesn't mean that I had a plan, or I just was extremely, it felt that my life had no meaning or purpose in that moment. And I went to an Anasa temple and laid down on a treatment table. And I was told I was completely accepted, first of all, completely loved. And the first thing I was told was that nothing had changed in my relationship to Anasa because I was feeling like this. And that was such a gift, to be allowed to feel what I was feeling, which was like I didn't want to be alive anymore. To be allowed to feel that without judgment was an experience I had never contemplated, let alone had. And it was one of the biggest gifts I've ever been given, was the freedom to feel that. And the freedom of being allowed to accept that feeling without feeling like I needed to punish myself for having it. A conversation that I could not have had with myself. Exactly. We hope this makes sense, because there was a freeing in that I can say, quite frankly, as Rebecca, that I've never had that feeling in that same way since then, because of the permission to not judge myself for having it. I think those two things are intimately related. And so, yes, go to the Anasa temple for anything you need. It is a healing space. And in being here with us, there is the invitation to use us in your own life. Yes, and the difference between Rebecca and you is that she's cultivated this relationship for years and cultivated her relationship to her own spirituality for decades. But there is still, there are people who walk into an Anasa temple and they walk out totally different forever. It's not always the amount of time. As we said earlier, it's not a meritocracy. Grace is involved. And, we all have numerous lives that we've had, and usually that we will continue to have. And that's fine, because, the real thing you were saying, Doris, is it's the appreciation of the fact that we're on a journey, and that always new things are happening, and we're always learning and growing from these new things. And sometimes it takes us longer than others, but it's in being able to appreciate, to love the journey itself, regardless of what catastrophe blows up in our face in the next moment. Instead of greeting it with fear, we can greet it with the awe and wonder of a child, by cultivating that in ourselves, no matter how bad we feel. And that's a really weird way to say it, but that's the way it's coming out today, is that, you can sit and feel a lot of density and be in awe and wonder at the same time. Wow. It's like it's snowing inside. How may we serve further? We hope that answers the question. And we're really glad for it, because, as we think about it, we haven't talked about the Anasa temple except in the context of dealing with others, trying to help others and ourselves. How may we serve further? Oh, we even wore black today, Saturn's color. Saturn is the planet that brings that which cannot be denied, the uncomfortable realities of being. So I'll tell you a bit about my own astrology since we're being quiet. Today's sort of about me, sorry. So I have Saturn very, very powerfully in my chart, and equally powerfully I have Venus, the planet of beauty and love. And they're two, they're right next to each other in power, equal power. Although Saturn has a lot more influence in my chart because Saturn aspects in a lot bigger way. It shines on other houses in the chart. So it has a bigger influence, although Venus is quite powerful in what it does influence. And I'll give a plug for our piano trio. My husband Andrew and I play with a violinist, and we give concerts. We couldn't give very many during COVID because it just wasn't possible for people to go to concerts. So we're starting to give them again. Anyway, we did one recently that you can find on if you go to theoldchurch.org, all one word, theoldchurch.org, and look for the lunchtime concerts. It's Musicorum Metacorum. And Brenda's putting it up now. I can see her doing it. Anyway, there's a link to a recent concert we did. We have a good time when we play. We all were professionals in the past. Andrew plays piano, I play cello, and we have a wonderful violinist named Alistair Cook who plays with us. He's fantastic. So we've been playing together for 7 years now. So we kind of have something that, if you're interested in classical music, there are a couple recordings of us up on that site. But I usually keep my different hats pretty separate. They're kind of merging today. Thanks, Brenda.
Yeah, the link is in the chat. They can just copy that for later or
Great.
now or whatever. Musical bedding.
So that part of our life is getting activated again. We're pretty joyful about it. We still rehearsed through most of COVID. After about 6 months, we chatted with each other online and decided that we would rather play music with masks on than, basically all three of us decided we would rather risk death than not play. So we started rehearsing again, the three of us. And fortunately, our living room's big enough that we could accommodate 6 feet apart and still play. How may we serve further? Well, we'd love another question, but if it's not there, we might just go to meditation and leave a bit early today. So we'll give a minute in case somebody has something. Okay, let's go to meditation. So we're going to do closed eye meditation today and pick up wherever you left off. And we'll sit for a few minutes. And we've been so grateful to be with you today. Thank you for coming. Okay. Thank you so much for coming today. We're going to end a little bit early. So totally wonderful to be with you. Thank you so much. Till next week.